Hi students, this is UMAMAGESHWARI, Assistant Professor, Department of English from St. Joseph's College of Arts and Science, Cuddalore. This video is for the paper British Poetry. In this video, we are going to analyze the poem Ode to the West Wind, written by P.B. Shelley. Let's brief about the author. P.B. Shelley, who was born on 4th August 1792 and died on 8th July 1822, was one of the major English Romantic poets. He was a radical in his poetry as well as in his political and social views. Among his best-known works are Ozymandias, Ode to the West Wind, Dear Skylark, The Necessity of Atheism, and the political ballad The Mask of Anarchy. He drew admirers like Karl Marx, Mahatma Gandhi, and George Bernard Shaw through his prose. Theme and structure of the poem: mortality, regeneration, rebirth, human limitations, and natural world are the main themes of the poem. Ode to the West Wind is a poem written by the English Romantic poet P.B. Shelley. According to Shelley, the poem was written in the woods outside Florence, Italy, in the autumn of 1819. In the poem, the speaker directly addresses the west wind. The speaker treats the west wind as a force of death and decay and welcomes this death and decay because it means that rejuvenation and rebirth will come soon. In the final two sections of the poem, the speaker suggests that he wants to help promote this rebirth through his own poetry, and that rejuvenation he hopes to see is both political and poetic, a rebirth of society and its ways of writing. Let's see the brief summary of the poem. The poem was written in the season of autumn. It begins with the poet directly addressing the west wind. In other words, he is treating it as a force of death and decay. However, he welcomes the wind despite what it brings. It is because the poet believes that death and decay are necessary for transformation and regeneration. It is a poem that shows us the power of the wind which brings a change in the natural world. Similarly, the poet wishes for reform in society. Moreover, the poem was underlying themes of optimism and hope for a better future. Structure of the poem: the majority of Ode to the West Wind is written in iambic pentameter. The poem is written in terza rima. This refers to an interlocking rhyme scheme. The first stanza is written in the pattern of ABA, while the second uses the same B rhyme sound and adds a C. So it looks like BCB. This repeats throughout the text until the final two lines, which rhymes as a couplet. Let's analyze the poem. First stanza: O wild west wind, thou breath of autumn's being, thou from whose unseen presence of leaves dead are driven like ghosts from an enchanter feeling, yellow and black and pale and hectic red, pestilence stricken multitudes, O thou who chariotest to their dark wintry bed the winged seeds, where they lie cold and low, each like a corpse within its grave, until thine azure sister of the spring shall blow her clarion over the dreaming earth and fill driving sweet buds like flocks to feed in. The first stanza describes that the poet appeals to the west wind. He calls it the breath of autumn by personifying the wind and giving human quality. The wind is said to be a spiritual being which drives away the evils. It is described as a symbol of deathly with deathly colors like yellow, black, pale, and hectic red. The dead leaves are considered as a symbol of death, dying, and sick. He asks the leaves to carry his corpse the way they carry wind. He describes the wind as both destroyer and perceiver as well. It adds hues and takes away the dust. Second stanza. Though on whose steam mid the sleep sky's commotion, loose clouds like earth's decaying leaves are shed, shook from the tangled boughs of heaven and ocean. Angels of rain and lightning there are spread on the blue surface of thine airy surge, like the bright hair uplifted from the head of some fair's Maenad, even from the dim verge of the horizon to the zenith's height, the logs of the approaching storm, those dirge of the dying year, to which this closing night will be the dome of a vast sepulchre, vaulted with all thy congregated might. In these lines, what we understand that the poet praises the wind's power. He says that the wind is more powerful than angels. He uses phase manad to compare the wind with a spiritual being that used to be around god Dionysus. He notices the storm approaching. He says that he desires to trap the wind in sepulchre to test its power. Let's move on to the next stanza. Of vapors from whose solid atmosphere black rain and fire and hail will burst, O hear, thou who didst waken from his summer dreams the blue Mediterranean, where he lay lulled by the coil of his crystalline streams, beside a pumice isle in Bay's Bay, and saw in sleep old palaces and towers, queering within the waves, intenser, all overgrown with azure moss and flowers. So sweet the sense faints, picturing them, though for whose path the Atlantic's level powers cleave themselves into chasms, while far below the sea blooms and the oozy woods which wear the sapless foliage of the ocean, know thy voice and suddenly grow grey with fear and tremble and despoil themselves, O hear. So, in the third stanza, the poet wants to insist the point that he wants the wind to hear them. The speaker describes the wind as having opened up the Mediterranean Sea from a whole summer of peaceful rest. The speaker simply implies that the sea was dreaming of the old days of palaces and towers, that he was querying at the memory of an intenser day. The first sign of the strong wind, the sea seems to cleave into chasms and grow grey with fear as they tremble at the power of the wind. Let's move on to the next stanza. If I were a dead leaf, thou mightest breer, if I were a swift cloud to fly with thee, away to pant beneath thy power and share the impulse of thy strength, only less free than thou, O uncontrollable, if even I were as in my boyhood, and could be the comrade of thy wanderings over heaven as then when to outstrip thy sky speed. Scarce seemed a vision I would never have striven, as thus with thee in prayer in my sore need. O lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud. I fall upon the thorns of life, I bleed. A heavy weight of hours has chained and bowed one too like thee, tameless and swift and proud. So, in this stanza, the speaker finally brings his attention to himself. He imagines that he was a dead leaf which the wind might carry away, or a cloud which the wind might blow. The speaker stands in awe of the wondrous strength of the wind. The speaker clearly contrasts the strength of the wind to his own weakness that has come upon him as he has aged. The speaker finally comes to his request that he wants the wind to carry him The same way it carried the dead leaves, the speaker calls for the wind to sweep him away old and decaying as he is. The speaker says that the weight of all of his years of life have bowed him down, even though he was since like the wind, tameless, swift, and proud. The final stanza. Make me thy lyre, even as the forest is. What if my leaves are falling like its own? The tumult of thy mighty harmonies will take from both a deep autumnal tone, sweet though in sadness, be thou spirit phase. My spirit, be thou me, impetuous one, drive my dead thoughts over the universe, like withered leaves to quicken a new birth, and by the incantation of this verse, scatter as from an unextinguished hearth, ashes and sparks, my words among mankind, be through my lips to unawakened earth the trumpet of a prophecy. O wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? In this last stanza, again the speaker begs the wind to make him be at its mercy. He wants to be like a lyre. Lyre is an instrument played by the wind. He asks the spirit of the wind to be his own spirit and to be one with him. The speaker asks the wind to drive dead thoughts over the universe so that even as he dies, others might take his thoughts and his ideas and might give them a new birth. The speaker asks the wind to scatter his thoughts as ashes and sparks, that his words might kindle a fire among mankind and perhaps awaken the sleeping earth. He desperately hopes that he might leave behind his dying body and enter into a new life after his death. Let's discuss about the literary devices used in the poem. Shelley makes use of several literary devices in this poem. These include alliteration, personification, and apostrophe. The poet personifies the wind or gives its human abilities that forces all animals don't naturally have. Alliteration is a common type of repetition that appears when the poet repeats the same consonant sound at the beginning of words. For example, lie and low. Enjambment is another common technique used in the poem. For example, the transition between lines 2 and 3 of stanza 1. Thank you.